Well, hello and welcome to Momentous Live, episode 145. I'm Tristan Jutra,
I'm Will Silver.
and hopefully joining us soon will be Gray Williams. He's been held up, hopefully not at gun or knife point. The lovely and talented Tasia Custodi is still on sabbatical. She's been working on some extra stuff for the last couple of months, so hopefully she'll be joining us again soon. And, if I got off my butt, I would schedule some additional guest hosts, but I haven't because of reasons, but that's okay. Here we are. It's just you and me, Will, until Gray shows up.
You and me.
So shall we start with a little follow-up? I trimmed the fat a little bit, and we're going to jump right into our big follow-up story this week. Seems to be dominating the tech news, and that is the reviews are starting to come in for the Apple Vision Pro. So this was announced last year in June at Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference. People were confused and excited and skeptical and optimistic. It's the whole gamut of emotions. And so now we are getting the reviews coming in from mostly large media outlets, those who had preview units. Some of these folks had controlled previews or controlled demos hosted by Apple in the last couple of weeks, which largely mirrored their experiences last summer. And I guess it was just like a little refresher with a few tweaks. And then Apple Security delivered the Apple Vision Pro units to certain folks, such as Joanna Stern from the Wall Street Journal, and folks at The Verge, such as Nilay Patel, and we have MKBHD, Marquez Brownlee. He's been hands-on with it as well. And then a few other folks are actually purchasing it, and we'll be seeing some of their hands-on experiences coming soon. There's a new podcast, friends of the show, Sarah Lane, and her co-host, I believe Eileen Rivera. They are starting a new podcast called Apple Vision Show, I think, which is going to be about the Apple Vision Pro and other Apple stuff, and they will be doing some hands-on discussion about the Apple Vision Pro as well. So if you want to watch Joanna Stern's video, it's up on the Wall Street Journal website. If you want to read her article, of course, it's paywalled. But I wanted to draw attention to it because she kind of set the bar for this, for reviewers, by wearing the Apple Vision Pro for the better part of a day. And she took it off to sleep, but she did like a full 24-hour day, aside from the sleeping part, wearing the Apple Vision Pro. Whereas in previous reviews, people have talked about, they get a little sore or fatigued after 20 or 30 minutes. So she was a real trooper. She took the whole situation a little literally in terms of people were saying that, some people have commented how the Apple Vision Pro looks like a pair of ski goggles. So they went and she and her team went and rented some recreational property up near a ski hill. And one of the things she did was actually did a little bit of skiing with it on and used the pass-through video. Not something that Apple recommends you do, but they actually managed to close off one of the bunny hills so she wouldn't be too much of a danger to herself or others. More of a stunt than anything else. But she was doing things like following recipes and cooking with it on. Some of the neat features showed like how you could set multiple timers, something that we only finally have started being able to do on some of our Apple devices in the last couple of years, such as the HomePod. But the neat thing is she was able to drag the timers to above certain pots on the stove. So one timer for one pot, another timer for another pot, and they would stay in that space, in her visual space. And of course, showing a lot of the other features, such as watching movies, doing your whole spatial computing setup, getting work done. What she said and what some other reviewers have said is that the virtual keyboard is virtually useless, aside from picking out a few characters, maybe for a Wi-Fi password, for example. Also demonstrated the the FaceTime calling using one's virtual avatars that you develop by scanning your face using the device. You take it off and then turn it around and scan your face with it, and makes a 3D rendition, and you can be on calls with people, FaceTime calls, whether or not they have Apple Vision Pros. But what they will see of your face is your virtual avatar, which are still kind of uncanny valley. She tried both the regular head strap and the extra head strap. It comes with 2 head straps. The one that goes above the top of the head as well. Most reviewers are saying that it's more comfortable that way and you get less fatigued. She commented on things like the power cable not actually being as much of a big deal as some people might have suspected. There is a holster that Belkin sells that you can keep it on your belt. Because she was using it so much, she just kept the battery pack plugged in most of the time while she was sitting and doing her work. Again, she was going these marathon sessions here. So it was a pretty cool in-depth video that I would I recommend people have a look at to get an idea of what it would be to use this device for a lot of different things. So other than that, some of the pros and cons from other reviewers such as CNET and The Verge, people are universally praising the display. It's the best display ever in a quote unquote VR headset, although Apple is not calling it such. The hand controls are pretty good, although Nilay Patel from The Verge commented that if your hands sort of go out of the range of some of the cameras on the front, then you can't control things. So you have to hold your hands up a little bit. If you're in a strange position and won't see them. So he said you feel quite conscious of your hand positioning, but that's how you select things. You actually use your eyes to point to things on the screens, or turn your head, and then you just tap your fingers to actually select things, which is kind of cool. The AR and VR, the augmented reality and the virtual reality, being able to flip back and forth between those using the digital crown, like on an Apple Watch, seems to be working pretty well. We learned also that Vision OS is based on iPad OS. So there's a whole lot of iPad apps out of the gate that are available unless developers uncheck the box, such as YouTube and Netflix have unchecked that box for some reason. Maybe they want to develop custom Vision OS apps and they haven't done so yet, but they seem to be playing the wait and see game. But it's kind of weird that they would turn off the iPad apps for Apple Vision Pro. So for those services and others, you actually have to use your web browser. And of course, Safari is built into the Apple Vision Pro. Some of the things with the photos, whether you're taking photos and videos with an iPhone 15 or 15 Pro or the Apple Vision Pro itself, people are saying that was quite wild, a little bit evoking feelings of nostalgia, almost like dream-like, watching these immersive videos, which is kind of cool. Of course, everyone seems to be commenting on the price, the weight, some of the glitches with a bit of the rendering and the hand controls, and of course the fact that there's a battery and cord required for use, and we kind of knew that already. And also, if you have glasses, you're going to have to get the custom prescription Zeiss lens inserts, which adds extra cost and a bit of extra hassle, especially if you want to be sharing the unit with someone. So you would need a couple of sets of Zeiss lenses, and it's not clear exactly how you would order 2 sets of those to pop in and out. Nilay Patel from The Verge did quite an extensive video as well, about half an hour long, and shared a lot of the similar observations as Joanna Stern from the Wall Street Journal. One of the other things he commented on was that it can feel a bit lonely and isolating when you've got this thing on. So, and that it's just like, it's very impressive in so many ways. And that's what a lot of these reviewers seem to be saying. However, it's obviously a 1.0 product, or even almost a little beta-y in a sense. Some of the apps, like the digital avatars, they actually are calling that a beta at the moment. So it's not the finished state. Just like Google has done for years and years with certain things. Hey guys, this is just the beta, so don't hold us to a finished product quite yet. But these in-depth video reviews are quite cool because you're getting the video output from the device itself, and you can see what it's actually like. Obviously, this is the first stab at a product category for Apple that they want to get smaller and lighter and longer lasting battery as time goes on, ultimately to like a pair of glasses. And we've got others such as, Meta has got the Ray-Ban glasses, but they don't have these kind of immersive features. They've got digital assistant and photo and video taking, but nothing like this. And then we've got other competitors like the Meta Quest 3 and the PlayStation VR and others, which are, some of them are similar size and weight, a little bit lighter, similar capabilities, but not quite as ambitious as what Apple is doing here. So there's a lot to process. I think people are kind of appreciating the technical marvel that is the Apple Vision Pro, but with the price starting at $3,500 US and more if you want. That's it for 256 gigs of storage, and if you want 512 gigabytes or a terabyte of storage, you're paying $200 or $400 US more, and then additional for things like extra battery packs, the belt clips, the prescription lens inserts, and the like. So you can be getting north of $4,000 pretty quickly in US dollars. So in Canada, that would be even more. Of course, this is only available in the United States to start. I took a look at perhaps ordering one, and it's a huge hassle to try to get one in another country if you are if you're not in the United States. It can be done, but even if you need prescription lenses, they insist that the prescription's coming from a US optometrist.
Oh,
so
man.
yeah, so then you'd have to just not have the prescription lenses and then maybe figure out something after the fact, or wear contacts with it. But if your vision is actually, if you've got bifocals or progressives, or then it would get complicated. And the whole thing is, you don't want to be wearing these without perfect vision, because I think it really sully the experience. So with all that said, Will, given what we've seen here from these reviews, the videos, footage, the immersive experiences, whether it's in the whole kind of the virtual reality or the augmented reality experience where you can see the room around you and do things like, you can watch movies in VR or AR. You can do computing in VR or AR. So it all depends on how isolated you want to be versus how much of the real world you want to see around you. What are your thoughts on this as a first attempt by Apple? And what would it take price-wise, feature-wise, size and weight-wise for you to take a serious look at something like this? Bearing in mind, it's a 1.0. The Apple Watch 1.0 was similar. It wasn't for everyone. It took a while, but it was the start of something. Same with the iPhone 1.0. Wasn't for everyone, but it was the first start and the start of something big. Is this the start of something big? Is this something that would ever fit into your life, Will? Or what are your general thoughts?
Sorry. I think it does very much look pre 1.0 so far. I think there's going to be a lot of things that need to be worked out, especially considering the price at this point. I think it's an interesting idea. I think it's probably the best attempt I've seen at this augmented reality, although they're not calling it that, or VR, or whatever.
It's spatial computing.
Spatial computing.
We're making up our own words now.
Yeah.
We're not competing with anyone.
Yeah. I would say it's probably the best attempt that I've seen, even in a beta, or I guess a pre 1.0 or whatever you want to call it. I'm certainly interested. I think this is the best attempt I've seen. I do think it needs a while to be baked. And we all know what that means is lots of brave people spending way too much money on something for them to figure it out. I don't even mind the way it looks. Obviously, glasses is the end goal. But I don't even mind how it looks now. I just think it needs to come down in price, and it needs to actually work better for me to be interested in it. Now, what is that price? I don't know. Depends on what it would do for me. I mean, I think, if you get it down to price of an iPhone or a computer, then that's might be reasonable, but we'll just have to see.
Well, yeah, so some people are saying, well, a laptop can easily cost you $3,500, and this isn't simply an accessory. This is a full-blown computer in itself, although it can work quite well with a laptop. If you've got a MacBook Pro in front of you, you just basically look at it, boop, and it pulls the screen up into your space, into your workspace, and you can add additional windows and screens and all that kind of thing, which is pretty cool. So it works as an accessory or as a standalone device, which is sort of a glorified iPad OS device, as mentioned. Some people say, well, for a TV of similar size, like this is basically can give you like a virtually like 100-inch TV. People would spend thousands of dollars for something like that. So there's ways to do the math to justify it in terms of the things you would do with a device like this. I think the problem being is that, like latter-day Cookie Monster would talk about how cookies are sometimes food, not all the time food, right? And whereas the veggies and other stuff are like all the time food. This is like a sometimes device, not an all the time device.
Cookie Monster sold out. He freaking sold out.
He sold out to big produce.
The vegetable people got it to him. What a friggin' sellout.
Yeah, he lost all respect for Cookie Monster.
Once he took those corporate sponsorships, it was all over.
So similar type of thing here is like, this is not at the maybe the function. Well, the functionality is pretty wild, but I mean the weight and the battery life. And you get 2-hour battery life, and then apparently the batteries aren't hot swappable, which I find a little wild. So I don't know, like, when do you shut it down? I that is to be confirmed. I just heard that from one source. So, but what Joanna Stern was doing with Wall Street Journal, saying, well, if you pushed it, you could use this like all day. And I'm not sure how stiff her neck was afterwards. Like, she was sitting and lying in all sorts of different positions to make it work.
Was she going crazy like or one of the things we're going to talk about later, Constellation?
I didn't have a piano before.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? Maybe. So yeah, it's early days, of course. We get those early adopters are there plunking down the dollars. It's still TBD whether I'm going to be one of them or not. I mean, I'm definitely intrigued. But we talked a few weeks ago about the Rabbit R1 and how that's a cool sort of AI gadget that has a lot of crossover functionality with a smartphone, but it's only $200, and at $200 you still wouldn't want that to end up in a desk drawer a year later. Well, yeah. You definitely don't want a $3,500 device to end up in a desk drawer even 2 or 3 years later. You've got to amortize that cost and get your money's worth out of it. But like I said, people are generally saying like that it's the quality is there. The fit and finish is mostly there. There's still a few little software things, but at the end of the day, you got to ship it, right? You could keep polishing and polishing and polishing. One of the things that I heard was that Apple was trying hard to launch this to coincide with the 40th anniversary of the Mac, which just occurred a couple of days ago. And the Mac represented a pretty seismic shift in the way we regular folks do computing, with the popularization of the graphical user interface, or the GUI. I think Apple's hope is that this will represent another seismic shift. But
sure.
The Macintosh was, for the longest time, always a niche thing. I mean, it got a lot of press because it was new and different. Then it had competition from all the various iterations of Windows, especially when Windows 95 rolled around 11 years later, and finally was really started giving the Mac a run for its money in the GUI type of computing. So I think this is exciting. There's lots of companies working in this space. Apple's got the money to throw at this for a while until and as things will always get smaller and lighter. The horsepower in this is incredible. People also commented that it gets a little bit warm after a couple of hours of use. I think there is one or more fans in there, very, very quiet fans, just to keep things cool. But basically, you're running a computer on your face. So yeah, the technical aspects of this are quite amazing, and I mean, it's only going to get better as time goes on if they stick with it. But so people those early adopters got to pony up the bucks, and I think the Apple hasn't released sales figures for this yet, and they won't until such point as they feel like it, or if the numbers are strong enough, such as at an earnings call or what have you. I had heard that they might be manufacturing as many as 180,000 this year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but at that price point, that's hundreds of millions of dollars. So not too shabby. Yeah. So any final thoughts before we move on to another paradigm shifting device? Will?
Not really. I mean, I think just, watch the space, give it some time. I mean, I think a lot of devices like the Apple Watch or, quite frankly, the iPhone weren't what they are now for the first couple of versions. I think the okay, sorry, my mind's going blank. The MP3 Apple device. There's
the iPod, yes.
The iPod.
Just so everyone knows, Will's got a giant headache today, so he's a hero for even being here. So the processing might be a little slow on the.
Yeah, sorry, I was just a little slow on the uptake.
iPod is what you're looking for.
Yes, the iPod, the original iPod. I remember you had one of the OGs, and even a couple years after that came out, it kind of looked like the Chernobyl edition. It's like
it was big and chunky,
and got hot and all sorts of things, and looked like it looked like it was made by cavemen who just figured out metallurgy. I mean, it was a bit of a chunky, awkward device. So things get refined, both hardware, software, power consumption, all those things get worked out,
And you think about what really made the iPod take off was a couple of years later with the introduction of the iPod Mini, which was smaller, lighter, less capacity, but really captured people's imaginations, came in lots of different colors. And then only after a year or two, they killed the iPod Mini, which was like the biggest selling device, and they replaced it with the iPod Nano, which is even thinner and lighter and even lower capacity, but sold like tons and tons. And then they continued to make the quote unquote iPod Classic beyond that. So they had a few different ones in the line, including the iPod Shuffle. They differentiated and they segmented the market a little bit there. So we could see a world in a 2, 3, 5 years where there's various editions of the Apple Vision. They won't all be Pros. The title of today's episode is Apple Vision Go. Maybe there will be an Apple Vision Go or an Apple Vision Air. I guess would be more on brand for them, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe straight up Apple Vision.
One more thing, just you remember this. I lived it. Was that people talk about these things being a little hot. How about the Xbox 360? I mean, that was basically shipped with a faulty heat sink, which caused it to separate from the board. And they sort of knew about it. They knew it. At least that is what the accusation is. And there seems to be evidence to support that. And the general thing was, we need to get out before the PlayStation, because that's the mistake they had made in the first generation. So whatever it is, we haven't figured it out. Just ship it, and we'll fix them afterwards. So that was basically the gamble that they took. And, we'll iterate. The second version will quietly, we won't call it a second version. We'll just start putting different heat sinks in them, which people, again, figured out by opening them up and taking a look at a OG one versus one that had been made even 6 months or a year later. So, people complain about this. There's lots of products that were shipped faulty and were less polished, and basically just let people be beta testers, right? So just grain of salt here is all I'm saying.
Hopefully, this doesn't get so warm as to separate your skin from your face.
That would be bad.
And it's maybe a good thing that the battery pack is not in the unit itself. A, it's lighter. B, it will be a little cooler that way. And C, if it does catch on fire, say like what was it, the Samsung Note version 7 or something like that.
Yeah.
Even old PowerBooks, Apple PowerBook laptop from the 5300 back from the 90s, they had battery issues too, and the occasional fire. You wouldn't want something catching fire on your face.
Well, separating your skin from your face is one thing, but spaghettification, that's where I draw the line. No spaghettification.
Hopefully it won't create any singularities, black holes that we get sucked into. The only black hole, I think, is just like the isolation of your diving into this world never to be seen again.
Yeah.
We shall see. Okay, let's move on to a different type of ambitious product. We spoke, this is another little bit of a follow up in a sense. I think last year, maybe even the year before, we were talking about framework. Maybe it was both years. As it was a newer company creating laptops that were modular. I think there may even be a framework phone that they're working on as well. We talked about the framework laptop 13. Well, this now we've got the framework laptop 16, which is getting into reviewers' hands. So it's a bit more of a powerful laptop. And the idea with the framework devices is they are modular. So think of an old school, tower PC, except it's little teeny modules in a laptop that you can add and replace. And the design is quite ingenious. When you pop the bottom off, and there's all these universal connectors for different modules. You can swap the keyboard and the number pad around, and the like. You can add things like SD card slots and different sorts of connectivity, USB ports and so on. The headphone jacks, USB A port, USB C ports, and they've all these little sort of bricks. It's almost like building your own little Lego computer. Pretty cool concept. I think especially interesting for people that like the versatility. I remember back in the day, like back in the 90s and then in 2000s, where people, we were kind of in that awkward transition period where there was still a lot of VGA monitors, but then you're starting to get like DVI monitors. We weren't quite to the HDMI time, but that was coming. And then we had old school connectors, PS2 connectors on PCs, ADB connectors on Macs, but then USB was starting to become a thing. So there were laptops that had tons and tons of ports. Or if you didn't have enough room for all the ports you wanted, there were PC cards that you could swap in and out of one or two PC card slots on your laptop. And so I had that too for different things like video capture cards and USB and the like, to add functionality and extend the useful life of a laptop. The whole idea with something like the Framework series is that you could replace virtually everything. At some point, even things like the board itself, like you get into like this laptop of Theseus sort of situation where what is even the original laptop anymore, right? Anyhow, the reviews are starting to come in, and again, people kind of like we're seeing with the Apple Vision Pro, people are praising the concept and the execution to a certain extent, like as regards the upgradability, the customization, the good keyboard and trackpad, good screen. But the performance in this case is a little lackluster. Loud fans. Again, you're paying a premium for the functionality, for this, customizability. The other thing too that people often don't think about is, as much as it's a pain in the butt that so many devices have gone to these hermetically sealed objects, which are difficult to repair on one's own. And I know that right to repair movement is quite popular in some circles, and Gray is a big advocate of being able to repair your own things. But once you make something that it's easy to open up and work on, you're losing a bit of structural integrity. Like there's, even when there were, cell phones with replaceable batteries used to be a common thing. But then you've got a little, thing, the back you have to remove, and they're often plasticky, and everything's a little creaky, and the fit and finish just aren't quite there, especially after multiple removals and reinstallations of the covers or the components. So it's all about trade-offs, right? But it's cool that you've got a player like this in the marketplace who is doing something different, fulfilling a demand, and hopefully that demand is great enough to be able to sustain their business, because you want those people to be supported for quite a long time, because they're buying into, and they're paying a premium to buy into this ecosystem. But being able to, the cool thing is, as new types of jacks and ports become available, new standards develop. The idea is that you could just, okay, we're at the USB 5 now or whatever. Let's throw it in our Thunderbolt 5, and people want like an Ethernet connector, for example, if they need a landline connection. So, what would, in what use case for yourself, Will, would you say that something like this, I mean, used to be, you had PC Tower in the past, you've had PC laptops in the past, you've been on Mac laptops for the last several years, a couple different generations, and as they're getting more and more, turning more and more to these sealed units. How much of the geeky part of you is intrigued by this kind of idea?
I mean, I think it's an interesting idea. I don't think it's really for me. I mean, definitely the ports thing drives me crazy sometimes because there's some ports I want and some ports I never use. So, I mean, I think that is something that is appealing to me, but I wouldn't pay a premium for it, I don't think. I mean, I could see there'd be interesting things that maybe you could do with external video cards and MIDI and all this kind of stuff if you wanted something to, you know, use as a digital audio workstation, a DAW, which is how you make music.
Yeah, I wonder if they have I guess a lot of that's connected through USB nowadays, or people still using MIDI cables.
Yeah, I mean, but MIDI cables, it would mean that you could directly input into, say, a keyboard or like a Roland TR-8S, which is like a sequencer. So, I mean, there could be some cool things there. I mean, again, I've thought about this for about 2 seconds, so I'm not sure it's a great idea.
That's our specialty.
That's our specialty. So I'm just sort of spitballing there. There's some interesting things maybe you could do with it. But yeah, I mean, I think it would be difficult for me to justify the price and justify having another laptop. But like you said, I mean, I kind of like the structural integrity of having an all-in-one machine, and I was someone who did used to replace RAM and video cards and all that kind of stuff. And I have to be honest with you, I'm okay with not doing that. It doesn't bother me. And like the other thing is like the stress of like the game of operation that you'd sometimes have to play.
Take out like, spare ribs for $200.
Yeah, and you're like,
your motherboard.
You're like, don't touch the sides. And then like one time, like the RAM didn't work or something, and I took it to like to computer store, and he's like, you arced it. I'm like, I did not arc it. Anyway, it's like if you didn't put it all the way in, then it might arc and fry the board and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, I didn't do that. And it's like, turned out it was just the wrong RAM or whatever. He sold me the wrong RAM. So anyways, I'm just saying I don't miss it all that much. And especially like laptops are such delicate, compact things, and not only have become more so, the more that they try to shove everything in there, that I don't want the stress of doing that. So I'm okay. Just I know, the general policy I think you have and I have is just buy as powerful machine as you can afford, and is reasonable. Obviously, you don't want to buy something that's completely nuts if you're just going to cruise the internet. But
depends how many tabs you have open.
Yeah, exactly.
Could bring this thing to its knees.
I would say, I guess maybe we're the 10% or the 1% who buy computers fairly often, every 5 years or 3 years or whatever.
Some people get like 7, 8, 10 years out of their machines, especially on the Mac side of things. It's wild.
I would say Macs, honestly, they last longer than PCs. I used to buy a PC every 2 to 3 years, and my last Mac lasted me about, 6 years? And I think like it was starting to feel it at the end, but I probably could have done some maintenance. I probably could have cleared up some drives and like put in some more RAM or something. Like I'm sure there's something I could have done, but again, I like that's where maybe you want to be able to do stuff, but like it's been so long since I fiddled with a computer that I wouldn't even trust myself as much as I did 15 years ago. So I used to swap out the RAM quite frequently back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So
as it got cheaper and your needs increased, just keep upping the RAM and
storage, power supplies and storage and all that kind of stuff. Like that's where I used to get especially nervous about graphics cards, because, and I know Gray is very experienced with that, and I think you are too, but I mean, that's where you really have to know what you're doing in terms of power supplies and like, connecting things and ripping stuff out of the computer and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, to your point, we have a family friend that they needed some help with their Mac laptop last year, and I was happy to assist them. And then I realized, wait a second, this thing is 10 years old, and it was still going strong for most of their needs. But to your exact point, we were able to upgrade the RAM. We were able to replace the original spinning hard drive with SSDs. So we were able to eke more performance out of it. And that's not an option nowadays. Now, on the flip side of that, both on the Mac side and the Windows PC side, is that just all computers are getting, most computers are just so good now and overpowered, quite frankly, for most things that normal people want to do, like how fast you need to scroll a Word document. To be fair, on the web, web developers are throwing everything and the kitchen sink at web experiences. So that's one thing that happens that breaks is web browsers on older machines, even when it comes to security certificates. So it can be hard to find a web browser that'll work on older OSs if you can't upgrade the OS anymore on an older machine. So there's a number of things that just start to break along the way. And even if the hardware in theory could get you there, sometimes the software just can't, unless you're doing something like wiping your drive and installing like some flavor of Linux on there, which some folks do. But you're definitely mostly out of mom and dad territory at that point. It's still not the year of Linux on the desktop, I'm afraid. But that is, having a lighter weight OS is a way to extend the useful life of older hardware like that. So we'll see. I mean, Framework's been going a few years now. Let's see how they do. Watch this space. They've got the 13-inch, now the 16-inch, and like I said, I'm pretty sure they had some kind of phone thing too. I don't know how that's doing, but let's move on to some fun entertainment stories. Well, this is kind of gaming. We're getting into movies and TVs by way of gaming. So this is our tech bridge. And so, Will, you found a story for us this week about Suicide Squad, which there was a couple of movies. One was not great, and one was slightly better. I didn't even realize that there was a Suicide Squad game. What's going on with that?
Yeah, so this game has kind of been cursed. They kind of gotten bad press every time it was sort of, when it was announced, people were looking forward to it. I think it was the studio behind Arkham Asylum. I'd have to double check that, but those Arkham Asylum games were very well received, also in the Batman DC universe. It's just every time there's an announcement or a gameplay trailer, people are criticizing it, or there's something wrong with the launch or something like that. This was early release. So basically, my understanding is if you pre-purchased the game, you could get it a couple days early. And when people logged in to the game, it showed us they were already completed. They automatically finished the game as soon as they logged in. So that was not a good bug. That's a very, very bad bug. And basically they had to pull the game offline right away. So they are saying it's going to be ready February 2nd, I think. So I don't know if that includes pre-launch, because that's often a way that they convince people to pre-buy, right? So one of the things is, gaming companies like you to pre-buy because you don't get to see the reviews. They throw a couple things at you, like some skins and a couple days early release. And that's guaranteed money that sometimes can help them with development, but also they don't have to worry about, negative reviews or negative buzz or, something like that, or
accusations, bug fixes that are
or accusations that the head of your studio is showing up without pants some days. It happens to the best of us. So so I mean, I think this is definitely just another kind of nail in the coffin of this game. It's too bad. It looks really interesting. I like some of the choices they made about characters. King Shark is there. I love that character and the way that they've depicted him in the last movie and here. Captain Boomerang, Harley Quinn, Deadshot. Um, a good selection of characters. It could get more into some of the decisions that were made in terms of um, balancing the characters. Some people are critical of them, but regardless, this is just not a very good way of launching a game, and is also noticeable because they must be tracking your progress on an external server rather than locally. So that might also be an issue long term. Some people are speculating. So yeah, so I guess hopefully they can fix it. Games like Cyberpunk 2077 have come back from really poor launches. So it is possible. So, I do really wish them luck. I think it might have been said here, but I work in a video game studio, and
you feel their pain.
I feel their pain. And, honestly, it's a lot of work. These are huge projects that take years and years. And something like this is really disheartening, and I can only imagine how hard that is. So, no Schadenfreude here for any reason. I think it's I like Suicide Squad. I'm a fan of the books. I have been for decades. So it is very sad to see, and hopefully they can pull this out of the fire.
I just want Sylvester Stallone back doing the voice of King Shark. Because
he was so good. That was the best thing about that movie. Honestly, it's the best thing about that movie.
And that was the second. So there was Suicide Squad and the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, the Suicide Squad. Yeah, I think it was.
And so this game was Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. I mean, that sounds pretty extreme.
Yes,
friends like that. But all right, in decidedly less hi-fi. This is some art inspired by a game. The good old Pong back in the days, right from the early 1970s. Well, I guess there's a Pong fan named Koen van Gilst who came up with this little thing called Pong Wars. And it's basically just a little thing that you can log in and watch. And you got a light side and a dark side. And I guess they start kind of at a random angle, and they just keep eating away. It's kind of like it's like almost like Pong crossed with Super Breakout, but it's like competitive, and just based on the luck of the draw and the direction of your ball and how it all works out and the interaction between the two, you can watch for minutes, if not hours, on how the battle between light and dark, or as they're called here, day and night, how that all unfolds over time. And it's pretty dramatic. Well, so if you ever find yourself having to disconnect from the stressful work world, or maybe ease your headache a little bit, you can just take a look at Pong Wars.
Can I bet on this on like Leo Bets or whatever those things are online?
Probably. just like if there's a thing, there's guaranteed to be porn of that thing. If there's a thing, there's guaranteed to be betting on that thing. You would, but that's the thing, is like this never ends. So you would have to make a bet based on a time, who will be in the lead after 1 hour, for example. Would have to be, you'd have to set some sort of parameters.
I just hate gambling. That was my that's partly my criticism of the gambling industry. So,
all right. So if you need to tune out,
personal opinion, not that of the show.
Exactly. Well, check out Pong Wars, and you can decide if it's worth gambling over. In similar lo-fi news, the art collective MSCHF, spelled MSCHF, that have been doing all sorts of wacky projects over the last couple of years.
What's their first mischief? Getting rid of the I?
They've done all sorts of wild things, real world products, digital products, everything's got an angle. Some of them push the bounds of legality. But what they're doing next is streaming movies in ASCII format via the terminal application on your computer. And so they do a different movie every day. Today, Tuesday, January 30th, you can stream Barbie for free via the terminal app on your computer. And what was tomorrow is Hereditary. I believe that's an A24 film. So what you do is you go to ASCII.theater, that's ASCII.theater, that's spelled the American way with an ER at the end. And there's some code there's a command line that you copy and you open up your terminal app on your Mac. I'm not sure if this would, for non-Mac versions, there's different instructions. Okay, how to stream it on a PC? They've got some separate instructions there because the command line the DOS command line on a PC is going to be a little different than that on a Mac. So there's a link there to check out the instructions on a Windows PC. Now, I actually couldn't get it working, and I tried on 2 different machines. So I don't know if it doesn't appear that things have been shut down in any way. There's no notice on their site. I don't know if there's geo-blocking going on or what, but this isn't like the studios are losing any real business over this because it's such a weird novelty hack. And they are, swapping out the movies every single day. I think it's an interesting tech demo, but for those who are not familiar, ASCII art is basically when you're creating images, in this case, moving images or video using ASCII characters. So that's letters, numbers, punctuation, all sorts of symbols that are available through the character set on your computer, and present those in rapid succession. And now you've got a movie, be it an Avengers movie or a Star Wars movie, a Shrek movie, or Pulp Fiction, or what have you. So we'll see how long this lasts. I just think it's an interesting little tech demo.
Yeah, it's cool.
And hopefully that command line, that code is not something that's going to hack your computer. It seemed pretty innocuous, and I don't think MSCHF is. They wouldn't. I mean, they're up to MSCHF, but I don't think they would want to be liable for compromising hundreds of thousands of people's computers. But we'll see. Maybe I got hacked. And other kinds of mischief, maybe mental mischief in this case, Apple has a new trailer that's dropped for a movie. Sorry, it's a TV series called Constellation. And it stars Noomi Rapace, who you may recall from all sorts of other fun movies, including that series of Swedish books and films, The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest, and The Girl in the Spider's Web, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, all that kind of stuff. But this is yet another cool-looking sci-fi installment from Apple TV Plus. So more recently, they brought us Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, which takes place in the Universal Legendary Monsters universe, so Godzilla, Kong, and all that kind of stuff. Wasn't bad. It started off cool, kind of lagged in the middle, ended cool. Foundation, where we had 2 seasons of Foundation. I've only watched the first season so far. Invasion, there's been a couple seasons of that. Silo, which I've yet to watch, but that's based on the Wool series of books. For All Mankind, we're 4 seasons in on that. That's from the showrunner there is the guy who did the Battlestar Galactica reboot, and he was involved with Star Trek back in the 90s. His name is escaping me at the moment. Ronald D. Moore. And he also is involved with Outlander, which is more historical fiction / time travel. Hello Tomorrow, which I haven't watched, and Severance is also great office-based sci-fi. So I kind of like what Apple's been doing on the sci-fi front. They've got generally pretty high-quality stuff and lots of good sci-fi. So having seen the trailer here, Will, in the story, this lady goes to the space station, then she comes back and everything's kind of different. And is it in her mind or what? For example, she didn't remember having a piano in her house. What are your thoughts so far on Constellation from what you've seen of this trailer, Will?
I think it's interesting. I mean, I'm curious, but looks a little freaky. But it is. I can tiptoe into freaky once in a while. So we'll see. We'll see what people think of it. If it's really awesome, I might dive in. But it's giving me a lot of vibes of. You know what it really reminds me of? Jacob's Ladder for some reason.
Interesting.
So she's already dead or something. Spoiler.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Jonathan Banks is in it as well, who a lot of people might recognize from Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
Was one of the characters there, or was he in Better Call Saul, or maybe both?
I think both.
And yeah, so I think we might have talked about Constellation a couple of months ago, but the write-up in December said it stars Noomi Rapace as Joe, an astronaut who returns to Earth after a disaster in space, only to discover that key pieces of her life seem to be missing. The action-packed space adventures and exploration of the dark edges of human psychology and one woman's desperate quest to expose the truth about the hidden history of space travel and recover all that she has lost. So, I mean, I like the fact that it's not simply a movie, it's a series, so you get to really dig in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So that is coming to an Apple TV Plus subscription near you as of February 21st. And that'll be on my list for sure. We've got a couple of things we will save for next time, maybe when Gray is back. But let's move on to our momentous picks, starting with you, Will.
Sure. Sounds good. Let's do this. My pick is Assembled, Loki season 2. I like these sort of behind the scenes thing. I'm a bit of a nerd, so I do like to see how the sausage is made. And I found this one really interesting, and I really like the series. This does seem to be, I don't know if, from what you've heard, Tristan, but some people either seem to like season 2 or hate it. I enjoyed it a lot. It was a little bit, I don't know, contained or slower or what have you.
Less. And the ending was a little controversial. I thought it tied things up.
I thought the ending was perfect. It was perfect.
But it's kind of like, it's a little sad in a way too. So yeah. I mean, but there's
you're seeing this whole arc, right?
Yeah,
like his whole arc kind of makes sense, and that he learns that he gets the throne that he always wanted, but there's with sacrifice, right? So
it turns out the real throne was the friends we made along the way.
Exactly. And then we lost. So yeah, no, I greatly enjoyed it, and I thought this was very good. The one thing, this isn't a huge spoiler, especially if you've seen the show and know what's going on. There's no interviews with Jonathan Major. They talk to everyone else except for him. So canceled. So yeah.
Too bad.
So they do have a couple scenes where he's talking, but it's clearly when they were shooting it on set, not like on the set, not like pulled them away to the side with separate lighting and everything. So,
and just to clarify, Jonathan Majors, he was the one who played Kang the Conqueror in the previous Loki season 1, and then in the Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and then in this he plays 2 different characters, He Who Shall Be Named, and then a variant of him back in the late 1800s as well, whose name escapes me. But, due to some sex crime misunderstanding, he has since parted ways with Disney. So TBD on what's going to happen with that character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So what are these assembled? Obviously, they're playing with the Avengers Assembled kind of title there. And what's the gist of these assembled series that we're seeing on Disney Plus thanks to Marvel Studios?
It's basically the Marvel behind the scenes.
Okay.
So it's just like assembled like how they made it, kind of thing. So again, you kind of have to like the making of type of thing. So if that's not your jam, don't watch this. But I enjoy documentaries. I enjoy this kind of thing. And I especially after I've seen something, I kind of like to hear more about what they were thinking when they were making it, or what some of the constraints were.
Kind of like DVD extras from back in the
day. It's very much like a DVD extra. And, if you have Apple, or it's not Apple, Disney Plus, this is already free. So, it's an hour or so. And I thought it was very enjoyable, and I recommend it if, again, you are into that type of thing. I know some people, it's like watching grass grow. So,
Which other assembled episodes do you recall having seen?
I've seen most of them. We are into these. So like, I think there was one for like Ant-Man and Quantumania. There was pretty sure there was one for Miss Marvel. There was one for Winter Soldier and Captain America. Falcon, or sorry, it was Falcon
and Winter Soldier. WandaVision, maybe. Like we've watched it. We've watched most
yeah,
of it.
I'm
Not this
pretty
most
sure.
recent one. I just can't remember them because.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there was a WandaVision one,
Yeah.
and I think there was a season 1 Loki as well.
Right.
They may have renamed them Assembled recently. Again, I'd have to look back into that. But yeah, so I mean, I know you're into the Marvel universe and you like movie making and how things are filmed and shot, so you'd probably find that interesting. They talk a lot about the sets, which I also find interesting. Like if you've seen this episode, like the Loom, or not this episode, the season about the Loom. I found the stuff about some of the costuming very interesting, about the challenges about some of the costumes and things like that. So very fascinating, and I love that stuff. So
cool. I'll have to check that one out. Another thing for the list. And we still subscribe to Disney Plus, so they got us renewing it a year at a time, and I think that happened in December. So here we go. My momentous pick this week is going to be, I think, a one of two, because only half of it seems to be within arm's reach here, and it's too bad that Gray wasn't able to join us. I know that his Mac was at the shop, and he was going to try and get his PC going, but the other things obviously have come up. But just give me 1 sec, Will.
What?
What? For those of you listening, I have a black cat with a little bit of white on his chest and a little bit on his undercarriage, and his name is Isaac. And he just came into our home yesterday, and he is...
How's he doing?
The pick of the week. Pretty good so far. He's a little spooked at the moment, but of course, there's always a bit of an adaptation time. He's in our guest room at the moment, and he might not be alone, but see ya. He's done for now. So yeah, they've been adapting pretty well, but we got all set up here in the guest room, and then slow introduction to the rest of the house. This isn't our first rodeo when it comes to introducing new cats to the household, but we had to say goodbye to our previous black kitty cat, Simon, back in October. We went in a rush to do anything since, and especially wanted to get through Christmas because it's such a crazy busy time, lots going on, some absences from home, and then plus also guests coming over and whatnot. It would have been a little bit much. But, Stephanie and I have been kind of window shopping for a bit, seeing what's out there, and had some particular criteria, which maybe I'll get into next week. But yes. That is Isaac, and he is momentous pick of the week.
Oh, Isaac, you got to send me some pictures so I can show my wife. What? How old is he? Do you mind?
He's about just over a year and a half. Yeah, going to be 2 in May.
See, we have a different approach, because you like to save money and get aftermarket. I like to buy straight from the lot and put on the first kilometer on my cat. So I like to know where all the flaws are, and I caused them. So
we like someone else to absorb the depreciation a bit.
Yeah. I just take all the depreciation and all that kitten food and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I like to drive the first kilometer on my cat.
All right. Well, I guess we should wrap this. We're still live here. Let's get to our projects. You got no projects this week. Hopefully,
next week
beats next week from you. We're looking forward to that. Real quick, our lovely and talented Tasia Custodi had another YouTube video. Google Chrome AI updates 2024, hands-on with Chrome's AI features. So you can see more about what she's up to at www.tasiacustodi.com and youtube.com/Tasia Custodi. And other project news, let's see. She and I also have another little podcast called AI Name This Show. Last week's episode was called Lighting Up a Generative AI, where we talk about Google's Lumiere generative video project. It's their third generative video platform in a year and a half. So in typical Google fashion, let's have lots of different things that do kind of the same thing and have different names. So.
Spaghetti wall.
Exactly. So you can find out more about us there at www.ainamedthisshow.com. And of course, you can find out more about us here at Momentous at www.momentous.tv. Come check it out. And click on all the things. Go to the links page or go to the podcast page. Subscribe and follow, all that stuff. We got to set up. There's a feedback form, a contact form on there. We should set up a feedback email address. I was thinking about that today because it'd be nice to hear from folks out there if there's anyone left. But with that in mind, Will, I think we're done. And until next time, we hope your week is truly momentous.